Hey everybody, and I'm going to hit welcome to another episode of Eating at a Meeting, and I'm trying to go live here on Instagram as well. My keyboard apparently is not working. There we go. So welcome, and this is my second time going live on Instagram, so I'm excited about that, along with Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, Twitter. So we're in a lot of places. So second episode of 2024, and I'm excited to help you celebrate Veganuary today with my fellow La Dame de Escoffier member from Philadelphia, um, Char Nolan. I want to make sure I say that right. Char Nolan. So hello, my friend.
Good afternoon. And I answer to anything, as I said. So you're fine. You're good. It's very nice to meet you. And welcome to anyone who I've known since my first Holy Communion who said they'd be tuning in today.
Well, we've got Ruth, Marion, and Dan Lotion on Instagram. So welcome.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's
So
Dr. Dan. He's an amazing plant based chef and physician. And I'm a big fan of his. So
wow.
I'm honored
Okay.
that he's here
Awesome.
today.
Well, good. I'm so excited. Okay, so tell everybody about what you're a chef instructor. So tell everybody what that means, and then you focus on vegan. Is that correct?
I focus on whole food, plant based, no oil, which is a very, very specific niche in the food world. I'm a chef instructor at the Ruby Online Cooking School, and I have cooked my whole life. And I also teach cooking throughout the city of Philadelphia. As we discussed earlier, I love my Charlie card, and we'll be returning to the South Philly Library, which is called the Health Library, because the third floor is a pediatric clinic, the second floor is a primary care clinic, and the first floor is the library. So I have a lot of input from physicians and nurse practitioners who want to send someone to a class who might have hypertension or type 2
Wow.
diabetes or any other related lifestyle diseases. So that's that.
Okay, very cool. So when did you go? When and why did you make the decision to go become plant-based?
Well, I'm a person who made fun of vegans. I'll be very honest with you. I
Okay.
used to think, oh my God, who are these people? And it was September 23rd, 2009. I was working at Whole Foods Market, and I went to a regional meeting. I was a marketing team leader, and our regional president came and told us about this exciting new program that was emerging. But what I noticed when he came into the room is that he was more robust, his skin looked great. And he began to tell us about this thing called the Engine 2 diet. And I listened with 3 ears that day because it was so fascinating to me. And the book offered a 28-day challenge where you would follow this regime, shall we say, of eating whole food, plant-based, no oil, no salt or sugar. And I thought, this guy looks so great. I'm going to try this. So on my way home, I went to a bookstore and got the book. And then I went to a grocery store and looked at the list and started the very next day, because there are two kinds of people in this world. There are those who jump into the deep end of the pool, and then there are those who tiptoe with their hand on the banister to get into the water. I'm a
Mhm.
deep end diver, so I was there 100%. And every day I kept a running list of what I was going to eat on day 29, because I could return to a burger or whatever.
That's awesome.
And when I woke up on the 10th day of following this regime, for the first time in many, many years, I have osteoarthritis, and I had not one lick of pain. And a little bolt went through my head that said, food is medicine. So when day 29 came, I just kept going because I
Wow.
felt so good. And looking at my own family's medical history, I thought, well, this will be a wise thing to do. And I'm going to show you. This is the book that started it all. It's called The Engine 2 Diet by Rip Esselstyn. He's a former Austin City firefighter. His father is Dr. Caldwell B. Whoops, I have a dog. His
Okay.
father is Dr. Caldwell B. Esselstyn from the Cleveland Clinic, who has years and years of research. So the book had recipes in it. It was easy to follow. And his wife, Rip's mom and sister wrote a book called The Prevent and Reverse Heart Disease Cookbook. And as you can see by looking at it, it is well used. And the other thing is Jane, sister, wrote this book 2 years ago, Be a Plant-Based Woman Warrior. I have a story in here about my own journey to becoming plant-based. And here I am. I'll be 75 this year, and I'm happy to say that I live a medication-free life. I have a very productive life. So essentially going to that meeting, seeing our regional president. But I do want to share one thing. At this time in 2010, exactly this time, I had applied to attend the inaugural Engine 2 immersion in Austin, Texas. Whole Foods Market was sending their employees to this event.
Okay.
And my store team leader had to sign off on it. And the day that he was supposed to give me these papers, he was what's called in the biz a no-show. And everyone was wondering where he was. And the sad news about it all is that he had suffered a massive heart attack and died. So his swan song, so to speak, was giving me this enormous life opportunity to go to this immersion. And I had lunch with his wife the other day because we meet several times a year for lunch, telling her that had her husband not sent me to that immersion, that the direction of my life would be very, very different than it was, or is today, I should say. And then shortly, a couple of years after that, I discovered the Ruby School, and I went to this 9-month certification to become a plant-based chef. And so I do everything, I have a very small niche again. So if somebody with heart disease calls me up and says, can you come to my house and show me how to cook this? Or I'm having a party, can you make that? I'm always sort of waving my banner. So that's the story in a nutshell.
Awesome. And I'm putting the link to the Ruby School in the chats there for everybody. And I want to make sure that we have a shout out to everybody here. Heather Landix is here following us on YouTube. And she said she found out she had a milk intolerance shortly after going vegan.
Interesting.
And then over here on Instagram, I'm so excited. We've got I said earlier, Ruth Marianne and Dan Lotion, Allergy Dragon, which is my friend Martha, the Sean Life, Chef Lee. Yeah. So, and then I can't, Amy Mackey, is that right?
Oh, Amy Mackey. Oh, Amy
okay.
Mackey is a champion at formerly called Engine 2, now called Plant Strong. We've worked together for many years, and she is the foundation under so many programs at Plant Strong. Proud to call her a friend, and her recipes are outrageous.
Okay, awesome. Well, I'm glad you're here. And then we just had Artfully Plant-Based join and Women Who Brunch just joined. So, wow, we've got a lot of people on Instagram. I'm excited that this is my second time going live on Instagram, so it helps. Okay, so
let me just say that Artfully Plant-Based has a triple crown from Ruby. She went to the Plant Pro course. She did the dessert course, and now she's in the Blue Zones course. So we love her work because in real life, she's also an artist, and her food reflects that artistry. So make sure everyone is following her on Instagram. She's really good.
Okay.
And by the way, Dr. Dan, I loved your hors d'oeuvres from yesterday. They look delicious.
That's awesome. And the Sean Live just said, you're such a huge fan. Everybody's a fan of you as well. So,
hello, Shawnee.
Yes. Okay, so let's talk plant-based. So a couple of questions that I had, I'm not going to get into the meeting side of it yet. What tips do you have for people because it's Veganuary and this is the month to try out going vegan. What tips do you have for people who are considering a plant-based diet for the first time, and or for those people who are already vegan and really want to enrich their vegan lifestyle?
That's such a wonderful question. And I always say, do what you know and do what feels most familiar for you. If you had a Big Mac for dinner last night, eating buckwheat might not be what you want to start off with. So you want to do what you know and see how you can flip your favorite foods to become more to your own liking. So that is a good tip to go. And I have a couple of little tips here and there. First of all, we talk about cooking without oil, and your best friend is going to be, you'll notice that I have this parchment paper in a wad because it's easier to set parchment paper on a baking sheet when it has been wrinkled. You'll pardon this
Really?
noise. Yeah, let me move it away from the microphone. So you can model it much, much better. You don't see it curling right now. So into that wad. And then the other thing, not related to oil, is that you can reuse parchment paper by simply flipping it over and saving it for the next time. So when we're talking about carbon footprints or economy and other things like that. But I always like to say to people, a roll of parchment paper is cheaper than any of that spray. I call it hairspray fat, because if you read the bottle, it says this has 367 applications. And that's for, I believe, less than half a second. But most people apply those spray, those aerosol fats as though they were hairspray. You're just, so you may as well just use oil, even though I'm not recommending that. The other thing is to find some spices that you love. You can tell I was in Italy. This is some ground garlic, but look at your spices, and maybe some of them are 5 or 6 years old. So you might want to go to a spice store or a bulk section or wherever and sort of up your spice game so that your food has some flavor to it. And you don't feel, the thing I often hear from is, oh, but it tastes like cardboard. Well, spices won't do that. The other thing is using lemons is just another good way to add flavor to your food. So start at your own jumping point, look at your spices, add more flavor. Interestingly enough, the flavor receptors on your tongue for lemon and salt are in the same place. So if you wanted to layer the flavor of a food, sprinkling some lemon on after you've cooked it will really add a lot of flavor to it.
I love that. And I love actually doing lemon zest. This is not plant-based, but when I do my scrambled eggs, I put lemon zest on it after the fact, and it adds so much more to it. But I know that's not vegan, but
you do bring up an excellent point about using lemon zest. As long as you stay in the yellow, once you go under the yellow and get the pith, it becomes a little bitter and sour.
Right.
But if you're making, for example, a plant-based stir fry, and a lot of times you'll see low sodium tamari or low sodium soy sauce. There's still sodium in that. There's 752 milligrams in a teaspoon of soy sauce, and the World Health Organization recommends that we eat no more than 1,500 milligrams. So that's where I say either dilute the soy sauce or at the end add some lemon zest or some lemon juice, and everybody will be happy. The other thing that I recommend is finding a cookbook or a website or something. And you can see that I've gone through these books for a long, long time, but find things that you like. I like muffins, so I make mighty muffins, or we'll talk about this later, but talking about full food utilization, here are some blueberry muffins that I made. They have no oil in them, and I used pumpkin puree as the fat. So the other thing that you want to do is click on to your favorite site or whatever and find some fat substitutions, which can be bananas, applesauce, tofu, sweet potatoes. And they will mimic the texture and give you a really nice flavor. But don't use bananas that are so ripened that they taste like you're eating banana liqueur. So that does happen sometimes. Those are 3 basics. And the other one, I was thinking of this yesterday because I went to pick up some greens at the store. And it used to be you would say to people, just shop the perimeters of the store. But now, these days, they have dairy and all kinds of things on the outside of the store. So it's not just the perimeters anymore that used to be so healthy. But, you want to avoid packaged foods. You want to eat greens. You want to eat grains. And you want to eat legumes. Yeah.
Yep. Okay, those are good. Okay, I'm going to come in here real quick, and we've got a Facebook user who I think is Nancy, saying she knew about the wrinkling, but she said she didn't know about the flipping of the parchment paper. So that's a good reuse. And over here on Instagram, Sean was laughing about the hairspray fat. Yes, so that's pretty funny. And Ruth loved your parchment paper flip thing as well. So it now, and I've learned too, shop the perimeter of the thing. But you're right, and that is the pizza aisle now in our, and I'm going through my grocery store, and it's the dairy aisle, and the cheese and everything all the way around, and then it's the meat, and it's just not, yeah, it's not just the vegetables in the front right corner anymore. So
It isn't.
yeah.
And you bring up another good point, because nowadays in the cheese departments of many grocery stores, you're going to find an abundance of plant-based cheeses, usually spelled with a Z. And my thought about them is that most of them are nut-based, so that if you have to avoid nuts for allergies or whatever, it's so easy to make your own. And for example, I make a cheese from garbanzo beans because it has that texture that you're looking for, and the way that you flavor the dish, and then the way that it sets will give you a nice consistency of a soft yellow cheese or whatever you decide to make. So I say to avoid them for a couple of reasons. One, they're very expensive, and they usually have added oils to them. And if you're avoiding oils, that's probably not the way that you go. So would want to go. So anyway, that's
Well,
a
and
good point.
I've made my own ricotta with cashews, right? And in my Vitamix, and put it in a vegetable lasagna, and nobody knew the difference. I mean, but you do need to, like you said, you do need to disclose, hey, this does contain nuts, because now you're replacing something that they wouldn't necessarily know. And I'm a big proponent of making sure everybody knows what they're eating. And safely as well. How we had, you and I had a conversation via email beforehand, because when I told you I was going to ask you this question about how is the plant-based diet cost effective. And really, when I'm talking, I want to talk about it at home, but I also want to talk about it in meetings, because I told you that there was an event that I produced, or I didn't produce it, I worked on it. And the vegan dish breakfast was $60 and the regular breakfast was $30. So how you don't have to hold your tongue back on, and let me know what was I being charged for, right? And they did use seitan, I know that, but how can we make it more cost effective, especially in the meetings realm?
Well, one of the things that I find as one who dines out is that I never use the word vegan. I just say, I have allergies to dairy. Can you please make sure that there is no such and such in my vegetable dish? And last week, my husband and I went out for lunch, and I said that, and my sandwich, my half a sandwich came out with the salad, and there was a big red toothpick in the middle of the sandwich that said allergies. And then there was another toothpick that said dairy. And I find that to answer your seitan question, if you buy pre-made seitan, commercially, it's very expensive. And you maybe get a 7 or 8 ounce cup of it that might run maybe between $6 to $8, whereas it costs maybe $1 to make. And if you are an inexperienced chef in a catering business or a hotel or whatever, and someone comes to you and says, we need seitan, someone's got to make a special trip to get it, or maybe their purveyor doesn't have it. And then somebody's got to go pick it up, and that becomes expensive. So I think I shared with you that I went to the best wedding ever, and the mother of the bride, who's a wonderful friend, ordered me a grilled vegetable platter with quinoa and rice. So that's what people are looking for. We're not necessarily looking for ersatz meats and cheeses. We're looking for roasted and grilled vegetables. So I think that if one approaches an event saying things like, we'd like to see some grilled vegetables rather than using the word vegan, I think that might be your money saver.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm
And I
appalled
know
at that $60, by the way. That's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, and that was pre-COVID, but I think, going forward, a lot of places, and I know, like last year when I produced an event, even though I ordered a chicken, and a vegan, they charged me the exact same price. And of course, they charged me the price for the filet versus the vegan. So it's streamlining their costs, but it also I shouldn't be paying $165 for a vegan dish when I'm plated meal. Yeah.
I'm going to say you're 100% correct. So the next time you go out to negotiate a contract, I would use the words grilled vegetables. And for breakfast, all a vegan really wants to eat is a beautiful fresh fruit salad, some oatmeal that's not cooked with dairy milk, and maybe some delicious, beautiful vegan muffins, which take 2 seconds to make, and there's no egg. The cost of these is it's like minus $2 to make these. So I think there are ways to sort of circumvent the system so that it becomes advantageous to you and what you do.
Okay. Yeah. No, I like that. And then maybe that's a really good thing to pre-negotiate. Nancy, write that down for me so I remember to pre-negotiate that in our contract.
Also add plant-based yogurts.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
So you can mirror what's on the non-vegan side,
right?
And have your signage and ingredient list, and people will. Let me tell you, the vegans will jump up and down.
Yeah,
they don't want to see fake bacon. They want to see nutrient-dense food that's delicious and fresh tasting.
Yep,
in my opinion.
Yeah. Oh, and I agree with you. And it's definitely challenging when we're trying to do it for events. I want to, before I post this comment from Colleen and these comments from Colleen and Heather, I do want to say hello to Bocata from Puerto Rico, and Robert Schuster, and our DOM president, Kathy Gold, Glamping Maya Gaez, and Kinaka. I can't say that. Cakes Fran is here too. Chef Fran, instead of catering, making separate dish, cook the oatmeal in water, the lentil soup in vegetable stock. Yes, ma'am. It's amazing. And actually I was talking to somebody a couple of weeks ago that they ended up cooking the oatmeal in an almond milk, and she's allergic to nuts and didn't bother to say that. So it's really kind of, we need to be cooking our oatmeal in water, which is my preference. But Colleen, I just want to get, this jumps back to the parchment paper thing. Colleen said you taught her about the parchment paper. And Heather has a good point here too. And we do have, not unless you really do have a dairy allergy, it is a little bit hesitant on saying that you have a dairy allergy, because it does sometimes confuse people. But we need to make sure, that means we need to make sure our employees are well trained at the same time in understanding.
We went to a chain restaurant the other day to grab a cup of coffee, and I said to the food server, "What kind of non-dairy milk do you have?" And she said, "We only serve oat milk because a lot of people have nut allergies." Nice. I thought that was like, the heavens opened with that.
Yeah.
So that was good. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So you you mentioned greens, and you mentioned grains and legumes. How do you use those as the base ingredient for your soups and salads and desserts? And I know I've learned from Fran using those for some desserts is good, but can you explain that to the audience of how you do that?
I will. I'm going to show you a couple of things.
Okay.
Because I was a fifth grade teacher. I also like to save money. So I save all of my vegetable scraps. I keep them in the freezer, but I kept this out because I wanted to show you. So I'm making tonight for dinner, I'm making some cauliflower wings. I've got an onion left over. I've got some carrot nibs, and most of all, I've got some kale. And kale is something that I eat every day. I never eat it out because most people don't strip it from the main vein, and very few people massage it. And massaging kale and then applying, an avocado or lemon juice or however you like to spice it is the way to go. So it's kind of disheartening to eat a salad on the outside that hasn't been treated that way. And we spoke earlier about buying your vegetables. So here's what happens. Your good heart says, I'm going to buy some kale today. And you get home from the market and you put it in the back of your refrigerator, and 3 or 4 days later, you open up what could be a scientific experiment. So with that said, I say to come home, to strip the kale from its main vein, and then chop it up by hand and just keep it in your refrige in an airtight container, and it will last you for a really long time. So whether you chop it up and put it into your lentil soup that's been made with that stock that we mentioned, or you add it massage to a salad, or you saute it in, again, that stock that you've made. So I personally am a person who loves beans. So I think loving beans is a big part of the solution. I like to make my own veggie burgers from scratch and put them into the freezer and then just pop them out when I want one to eat. And again, a homemade veggie burger might cost you 50 cents per burger to make, whereas in the grocery store, I think they are prohibitively expensive, loaded with salt, also loaded with oils. However, if you don't have time to make your own burgers, then that's a much better option than,
Right.
eating a juicy burger from wherever the place. So I like pasta. I think I shared with you earlier, I spent a week at a culinary mainstay in Mola di Bari in Italy. And it's the area where my grandparents are from. So I grew up eating a lot of lentils and a lot of pasta. So I will make a pasta dish and then throw in some of that kale. And then I season it with my very own version of a Parmesan Reggiano. This is nutritional yeast, which is sort of like a mainstay in every vegan or plant-based person's kitchen. It's loaded with vitamin B12, and it only has about 20 milligrams of sodium in it. And then what I do is I add about a tablespoon of walnuts to it, and then I get this really delicious, it's so good, delicious cheese, and I add garlic powder to it. I don't add salt. Some people want to add salt. So it's about adding flavors that are natural and delicious that I like. So a nice soup, a nice big bulky soup would be, it would have lots of vegetables in it. It would have a homemade stock. And then at the end, I might add some cooked pasta because I like to bulk cook. So it's really easy to cook a pound of pasta and keep it in the fridge and then just take out what you need, because sometimes you're running late or whatever. But the thing to think about is, how can you flip or convert your favorite conventional recipe? And that's where I call it challenge and pride, because it's a challenge, but once you can learn to do that or teach yourself to do that, you feel so great about that. So, head to a coffee shop and say, oh, I'm going to eat that bran muffin, but it's going to have about 25 grams of fat in it, and it's going to be about 400 or 500 calories. Whereas back to these little muffins that are made with oat flour and pumpkin and blueberries that almost went south, but I didn't want to, throw them out. And they're really, really delicious. So I don't feel bad having 4 of those for breakfast. I mean, they're that little, but it's like having a bowl of oatmeal. So do what you know. And I also tell people that this is not something to be intimidated by, because you will feel so great. If a long-term plant-based life might not be what you're interested in, look into the Meatless Monday program, which provides a plethora of wonderful ideas and recipes and camaraderie. And it's just one day a week, but that one day a week will be helpful to you and the environment and animals as well.
Awesome. Very cool. Dan said he's got cauliflower wings in the oven right now.
Oh, well, Dan doesn't live too far from me, so we could
probably to run over there for lunch.
We need to have a wing off tonight.
And then Heather said, she did say she just popped off, but she said, yeah, kale stinks. So nice storage tip on that kale. But this one person said, who I think it is Nancy, massaging kale. So can you explain that to people?
How about if I show you?
That would be great. Yeah, show and tell. It's great.
So we all have different massaging techniques. I learned this from Ann Esselstyn, who is Rip Esselstyn's mother, who's written a million cookbooks. So first I'm going to show you that you can see this color. See how that green is that?
Right.
So I take a big handful in my big hand. So I'm going to rip this. And then you crunkle it up. You can hear that noise.
Yep.
And then you massage it. But I'm going to show you the magic, because this is...
There's
Shanae is looking at
moisture.
this because she remembers this assignment from being a Ruby student. First of all, you can see that there's now some chlorophyll on my hands, which
Right.
lets me know that I've broken down the chlorophyll on the leaf, which is going to be more receptive to flavors. And
Okay.
then look at how much better. Wouldn't you want to eat this in it? Whoops, wouldn't you want to eat that in a salad? It's
Yeah.
easier to chew. It's more receptive to flavors. You don't need to do it if you're cooking kale because it cooks similarly to spinach, but the flavor, whatever you do with this, whether you have just lemon or you've got hummus, I like to use hummus as a salad dressing. You take a couple of tablespoons and put a little water or vinegar or lemon juice and put it in your little NutriBullet, whatever this
Mhm.
thing is called, and you have a nice creamy dressing that doesn't take a long time to make and doesn't cost an arm and a leg.
Um, Sean was like screaming, "Yes, yes, that sounds so good." Now, and I've seen it done, and I've seen recipes online that says massage it with oil, because to make it, but that's the best. That's the way to do it without any of that oil, and it still brings out those flavors.
You get a better
Yeah.
massage without the oil, to be honest with you,
Okay.
because
Yeah.
the oil acts as a layer. So when you're trying to massage that kale and bring out the chlorophyll, which is
Hmm.
always my goal, it doesn't give you the same breakdown. So that's just my tip. And
Gotcha.
I
Okay.
know that Chef Fran Costigan is here, and she labels herself as the um, uh, pastry queen or dessert queen or whatever, but
Uh
she's
huh.
really the kale queen because if you follow her, she has kale on her feed every single day. And I think we had a 20-minute discussion yesterday about kale that we recently purchased. And I do want to
Really?
share one thing. Depending where you shop, it might right now a grocery store has 2 for $4 for organic kale, which is wonderful. A conventional grocery store where I shop has organic kale by the pound. So that big gigantic bunch of kale was $1.17.
Oh
So
wow,
if
that's
your kale is sold by the pound, it's a wise investment.
yeah, that's a great idea. You've inspired Ruth to go buy some kale today, and Sean says the I love the hummus dress as a dressing as well, and agrees with you. No oil on that, so that's I love that because you're not adding that extra calories to it,
Mhm,
and you're not
mhm.
actually adding that oil to it. So cool. Um,
And
go ahead.
I just want
No.
to say one thing
Mhm.
about oil. Um, to sort of put things in perspective. So a tablespoon of oil has
Mhm.
9 grams of fat in it.
Okay.
Now you can go to your favorite cooking store in Philadelphia. It would be Fonte's on 9th Street, and you could buy an aerosol spray that you add your own oil to. But here's the thing: one spray equals a gram of fat. So if you do 9 squeezes of that, you have the equivalent of a tablespoon of oil. So my
Wow.
question is, you have to be really aware about using substitutes. Like we talked earlier about soy sauce, and now we're talking a
Mhm.
little bit about oil, but naked kale massaged will give you the best result.
Awesome. All right, because you said soy sauce again, because I'm gluten free, so I
Mhm.
use the tamari. Is the tamari as salty as the soy sauce?
Two things. Now, Kikkoman and all those other
Mhm.
brands now have gluten-free soy sauce, which I think is very confusing. So if you look at a label, the brand is escaping me, and if somebody can tell me, or I can run to my spice rack, there are now tamaris that will say 25% less sodium, 50% less sodium, but their milligrams of sodium are very, very close. But I like
Okay.
tamari. I think it has a better taste, a richer taste,
Mhm.
and just an interesting thing because we shared earlier how a lot of my work is done in underserved communities. And there are many big box stores near underserved communities that have their own brand of soy sauce, and the first ingredient is sugar. So if you might be a type 2 diabetic, and telling your doctor that you're using soy sauce instead of using salt or whatever, but that your blood sugars are a little bit crazy. And Dr. Dan, feel free to chime in on this. You really have to be a good label reader. So that's the one thing that I suggest that everyone do. Yeah.
Okay. Awesome.
I'm
Amy just piped in. The brand is Sanjay.
Sanjay. Thanks, Amy.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So because you mentioned it, so let's talk about your work in underserved communities. The Charlie Cart Project. You bring culinary education to communities. Can you tell us more about what that is? And I'm going to pipe in another question in there. Teaching them that, how has that changed? What changes have you seen in the people that are attending those classes?
Well, it depends which specific community I'm in. So I will tell you that I've spent 2 summers creating a thing called the Tasting Station at an inner city working farm, and write out recipes on 5x7 cards that are printed beautifully, that are in a large font, that are written at maybe a 3rd grade level, with a photo attached. So, because many people are visual learners, but the recipe that we would be giving out for the week is what we would be serving that day at the tasting station. So I think examples work best. In one community where I work with the Charlie Cart, and I'm going to take a step back here and say the Charlie Cart is a 600-pound kitchen on wheels. It's 5 feet 1 inches long, and it's 24.5 inches wide. And it is actually a full working kitchen. It has a magnificent toaster oven, a Breville, and it bakes. It's a convection oven. It does everything. It has a full set of Cuisinart pots and pans. It has a Vitamix. It has mixing bowls. It has every utensil you would want. It has a sink that if I fill the reservoirs up, I can use it. If I'm working outside, I will do that. And what I have learned is this, working at the South Philly Library, we, pre-COVID, and we're bringing this back in, we were able to get food donated from an organization so that what we made in class that day, we would then prepare a take-home kit so that people could make the same exact thing. So hands-on, doing it yourself, having a guest chef, one of the participants. I think that people learn best by example. And if you look at food insecurity and teaching people how to best utilize their dollar, they go home with this little kit, and then they'll send me a photo and say, oh, Chef Char, I made this or I made that, but I had to add a little salt because the flavor wasn't to my liking. I still think that's great. So, there's the old expression that says progress is perfection. Progress makes perfection, but progress is the perfection that you're really looking for. So making people aware, or something so simple like this, like making a fibery muffin, and then having someone call you up the next day or text you and saying, oh, Chef Char, now I know what you mean about having to use more fiber in my diet, because those were delicious and it worked. So, it's just that kind of stuff.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. And okay, so one thing, when I lived in Atlanta and we did some cooking classes for actually some of the school cafeteria workers, etc. But even when the farmers markets have you can go in and use your
Snap dollars.
Thank you, SNAP dollars. But a lot of times they don't necessarily, a lot of those people don't have the equipment to use. They don't have a Breville, toaster. So how do you teach them with the equipment that they have at home? I mean, I think that's one of the challenges too.
Well, everyone has, I'm assuming most people have a stove and most people have a couple of pans. And I think that, we spoke earlier about myself being somebody who jumps into the deep end, but I think baby steps work. So maybe moving away from using a frozen dinner that's easy to cook, maybe showing people how to take that and make that same meal. Everybody has an oven. So
Right.
the Breville happens to be my on-site portable oven, and
Gotcha.
that's what what we use. So the other thing is, I am somebody who likes to incentivize people. So whether it be a coupon, every time you come to class, you get a little coupon, and on week 4 or week 6 or week 8, you're eligible to win an air fryer. And I
Oh,
give
cool.
them the choice that they could either win a Yonana's machine, which makes ice cream, or they can win an air fryer, or they can win a little blender. And the air fryer always wins. And they love. You would think that I was on The Price is Right or something like that, because they come to class. I have a
Mhm.
very, very low attrition rate in my classes because A, they're hands-on, B, they're fun, and everybody gets to go home with the ingredients to make what the
That's
recipe
awesome.
was for the day. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. Because then that
But
gives
I
them the
also
hands-on.
I just want to say one other thing. The breakdown in my brain is that I also teach in more affluent communities, and my brain really has to do a switch because
Okay.
there's a different mindset, a
Mhm.
different expectation of what a chef is going to bring to a class, but everybody still goes home, really
Yeah.
happy, learning to make, you know, um, avocado pudding or whatever.
Right. Yeah. And I don't know why this just came to my brain, but I read a statistic or I heard it that there's more dollar stores in the US than there are Walmarts, which is a little disconcerting when a lot of the dollar stores don't have those fresh vegetables and things like that. So we've also got to get them to places where they can buy fresh vegetables to do all of that. Um,
Well, many dollar stores nowadays have a frozen section, and
okay.
I am a big
Frozen
supporter of
vegetables. Yeah.
frozen vegetables.
Mhm.
Even though if you look at the size of the package, it's not 16 ounces, it's not 12 ounces, it's usually 9 ounces. But
Mm.
if you live near a dollar store and that's your avenue to finding healthier food choices, I did a class last year, shopping at the dollar store, and got all of my
Oh,
ingredients at
really?
the dollar store. Yeah. And
Wow.
everybody was thrilled to death because the dollar store sells for $1.25 a full pound of brown rice, a full pound of red beans. So if you're looking at the basics of how to approach adding new ways to cook with people, go to the dollar store. The other thing is, when I do a needs assessment in a community, I go to the local grocery store, I go to a bodega, and
Mhm.
if they live near a big box store, I will also go to that, so that when I'm teaching a class, I can say, well, if you go to such and such, it's going to
That's
be
awesome.
in this aisle on the 4th shelf. And then they'll come back and say, oh, I
That's
went to the
awesome.
store.
Mhm.
So it just, when you teach this way, you are dispelling the myth that being plant-based is expensive.
Right.
So making it community-based makes it a lot easier. And Dr. Dan and I work in similar communities, and I'm sure that is much of his experience as well. My dream, he doesn't know it, but my dream is to teach with Dr. Dan. So.
Okay, Dr. Jane, if you're still on the show, there you just heard it. Um, well, and I think that's really, really important because not only did you did the research on where they are, right? So
Mhm,
you learned a bit about them without them really knowing that you did that. And then you were
mhm.
able to explain to them, hey, I went to your shops and this is where I found this and this is where I found that. And I think that is that personalization that a lot of people need in any kind of class or any kind of lecture that they're going to, so that you spoke to them personally and that you understood where they were coming from. So I that's very, very heartwarming. So thank you for doing that. Colleen has just piped in here that the world is a better place with you in it. Thank you for teaching us.
Oh, Colleen is so sweet.
Okay. And Dan just wrote a mutual dream come true. So okay, you heard it on the Eating at a Meeting podcast that Char and Dan are going to cook together. So let us know when you're going to do that. Um, and Amy said frozen mangoes at the Dollar Tree with 2 exclamation points.
Oh,
Um,
Amy's correct. They're
yeah,
excellent. Oh my gosh, they're
really,
perfect. Yeah, yeah.
really okay, awesome, good to know. All right, I have so many more questions to ask you.
Mhm.
We the Because this is also about eating at a meeting. So how can we talked about the price of vegan meals that I've, worked with before, but how can meeting planners work with their chefs to integrate more plant-based options into their menus? I mean, because it's like, and even somebody the other day said they were trying to incorporate it and they're getting pushback from the attendees. And I won't reply back but by how many attendees? I'm like, if you've got a 500-person conference and you're only getting pushback from 5, then that's not a big percentage, right? But how can we incorporate them into our meeting menus without getting pushback?
Well, the first thing that came to mind when I saw this question was, can a meeting planner create a suggested plant-based menu so that
Okay.
you arrive to the catering facility or wherever months in advance and say, we're going to have traditional conventional food, but I'm wondering how we can incorporate these. What is your best practice? One of the things I find is if you can make someone believe that it's their idea,
Right.
bingo, bango,
Uh-huh.
they'll be your best friend for life. So that would be one way. And then I think, just as my friend Maria did for her daughter's wedding, she said that she had 2 people who only ate vegetables. Can you make some grilled vegetables? And Maria was very funny. She said, and I told them, no pasta at the wedding, because pasta seems to be a mainstay at a lot of
It
weddings.
is,
So,
yes.
yeah,
Well, and corporate meetings, yes.
yes,
Yes,
yes.
yes,
But then
yes.
you have the gluten-free people to think about. So it's not always a good
Right.
thing. But the dish that I had brown rice and quinoa. And who doesn't love quinoa? Contains all 9 essential amino acids. It's the perfect protein and it's not expensive. So there you go.
Right.
So
It
maybe
literally
making
just
up a menu would be a good idea.
okay, all right, that's a good idea. I mean, and give them some options, to say, "Hey, I wanna do this," and definitely and I think asking the questions up front, "What is your skill set in this?" And let me see some examples. Okay, so we're at the 46 minute, whatever we're calling that,
Mhm.
minute mark. So I wanna wrap this up. Do you have any I have one more question and then my standard question. Do you have any last minute tips that you can give for people, chefs, and home cooks on going whole food plant-based?
Well, again, identifying a book that will work for you so that, every time I buy a cookbook, I find 5 recipes in it that I want to try. And then I do 1 recipe a day so that I can find something that I like. Not to be intimidated, to do a search on Google, vegan foods, or how to convert to
Mhm.
being a full-time vegan, a part-time vegan, or whatever. The veganism diagram is people who eat plants for their health, for the environment, and for the animals. And then also when you think about food sustainability and other things like that. So, anyway,
Okay,
that would
awesome.
be my suggestion. Do what you know and do what feels best for you. I'm not a person who
I
likes to
love
eat
that.
fake food. I wouldn't eat like fake fish sticks, but some people miss the texture and the aroma
Mhm,
and the flavor of those foods. If that
mhm.
makes you happy, then you do that.
Right. Okay. Yeah. It's a compromise, and depending on how much time you have in the day to get some things done too, right? That might make it easier for you to convert.
Well,
Yeah.
on a personal for a home cook, being a batch cooker is a really time saving thing. You batch
Mhm.
cook your bag of potatoes, your sweet potatoes. You get out your rice cooker and you make rice for the week or whatever. Put it in the freezer. I batch cook beans because who has 2 hours to cook beans? No one. So, and I also love a crock pot. A crock pot is
Mhm.
great for cooking beans and making lentil chili and all kinds of other delicious dishes. So,
That's a
um,
really good point. Yeah. Crock pots are like decades worth of home cooking dreams come true, right? Yeah.
exactly,
And now the
exactly.
the what's that called? The
The air fryer.
air fryer. Thank you. We don't have one in our house. So, okay. So the question that I ask everybody at the end of the show is based on everything that I believe in with this show is what does a safe, sustainable, and inclusive food and beverage experience look like to you?
Well, The first thing is that as a goer to events is not to take the inventory of what's not there that you like. In other words, if I do that, it gives me a really negative attitude. So I look for the positives of
I need
finding
to
a
do that
food server,
myself.
finding a food server who just gets it, enjoying my company, and seeing foods that I can make work. So it might be this: there might be a buffet, and it might have one plant-based dish, but I see through the corner of my eye that there's a garnish of tomatoes or whatever. So you have to make things work for you so that you can have a good time wherever it is that you are. Yeah. And I will also tell you, I wrote a thank you note to the event planner at the hotel we went to for this wedding, just saying, thank you so much for accommodating my meal choices at the such and such wedding. It was so nice of you. I really appreciate it. Best wishes. I'll make sure to tell my vegan friends. So I think that that's, we have to reward positive behavior, especially in the food industry, which I think is so underrated and underappreciated.
Yeah. Oh, I wholeheartedly agree. Yeah.
Yeah.
Those servers work, servers and cooks, front of the house and the back of the house, work really hard to feed us.
I did want to say one more thing.
Yeah.
And if anybody, it's not a plug, but you know how I love full food utilization and extending food and making it work and decreasing waste and things like that. The James Beard Foundation has a program called Waste Not, which is free on Ruby, and it teaches you so much about sustainability and communication between the front of the house and the back of the house, and resourcing foods and taking vegetable scraps or fruit scraps, for example, and making a tea or making desserts or other things like that. I took this course, and it probably had one of the biggest impacts I've ever had in my life in terms of managing my own home kitchen and how I teach.
Really? Okay. Well, and I just went and found it online, so I'm going to post it into all the comments on Instagram and on Facebook and such like that. So everybody, that's interesting. I didn't know that. So I will take that class myself. That sounds really
It's
interesting.
also a good thing to share with other DOMs, because I think that as we all look to more cost-effective ways to feed people and also educate people, that the course was, for me personally, life-changing, and I had so much fun in it. So I also wanted to give a shout out to Dom Kathy Gold, who was the person who nominated not just me, but Fran Costigan and Chef Alice Leung. We were, I think, the first 3 vegans to join the Philadelphia chapter of Les Dames. And Kathy doesn't know it, but she opened so many doors for all of us. And I'll always be very grateful and appreciative to her.
That's so sweet. Yeah, I know her from Instagram or from all of our Dom Zoom calls and things like that, but had got the opportunity to actually chat with her at the conference back in October. So I'm excited that she's taking the helm of the organization internationally, and can't wait to see what we're going to do all year long. So, and Fran is giving you 5 hearts, and Kathy gave you 3 hearts, and Artfully Plant gave you 3 claps, and Primary Plant-Based said, thanks for sharing your tremendous wealth of knowledge. I can't show the comments from Instagram onto the screen here, so I have to read them out. So, but everybody, thank you so much for being here. And Char, thank you so much. I would love to take classes from you. You're easy to listen to, and you've a wealth of knowledge. So thank you so much.
Well, you're very kind. I was impressed, very impressed with how organized you were and how you laid everything out and made it so easy for me to technologically jump on this event with you today. So thank you so much, and Happy New Year to everyone. And thanks to my friends and colleagues who may have tuned in today. It means the world to me. And I have a Ruby live event next week. Fran has a Ruby event next week on the 16th, I believe. And Fran's events are always great and delicious. So one last thing. If you want to become vegan, go with desserts first, because desserts are the easiest thing. It's like that
Oh,
Louise Hay
really?
expression. Well, it's like that Louise Hay expression, life is uncertain, eat desserts first. So if your life is uncertain and you want to go vegan, eat Fran's desserts first. That would be my plug.
Well, and I'm going to go in later, and Fran, I'm going to find the interview that I did with Fran, and I think it was
Great.
2 or 3 years ago, Fran. We need to get you back on here to talk about desserts. And I'll put the plug in here. I'll put the link into her session. I'm curious though. I'm looking on the Ruby website. How do I do a search for that class? Because what I did is I found the book on James Beard, not the class.
Just type in your search engine, just type in Ruby Waste Not, and it will take you directly to that link.
Okay. And I'm going to make sure that we get that link in here for everybody. There we go. Okay. Got it. And I'm going to put that in Instagram right there. And you've got a lot of fans over there on Instagram. So thank you everyone for tuning in. I'm so excited. I'm so excited to actually add Instagram as a live feed for my show. And we'll be doing that going forward. For any of you who don't know about Eating at a Meeting, I actually need to change my sign. Eating at a Meeting is a live every week on Wednesdays at 12 o'clock. And I talk about all things safe, sustainable, and inclusive about eating at a meeting. So please subscribe on your favorite podcast platform and then come and watch the live broadcast on Wednesdays. And January is Veganuary, but it's also Dry January. So next Wednesday, I'm talking about Dry January. And I've got Kate and Jen from the Zero Proof Collective out of Minneapolis to talk to us about what to drink this month and past that if you want to not drink alcohol anymore. So Fran says to you, Char, so sweet of you, but true. Chocolate pudding brings people over. I love to come back. So I will shoot you an email, Fran. And Kathy Gold said, great conversation. Thank you. Thanks, everybody. And I appreciate it. Until next time, everybody stay safe and eat well.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Yes. Oh, my key back.